I want to talk a little bit about esophageal atresia with or without tracheoesophageal fistula. Now this is again neonatal, not really lung pathology, but lungs play a major role in these defects. Now as you say that one on the extreme right is what should be the normal anatomy, that there is an esophagus which is separate from the trachea. But with esophageal atresia, there will be a disconnect of the esophagus, and with a tracheoesophageal fistula, the esophagus and the trachea are joined together. In the first case, this is a pure atresia, there is no fistula. In this, there is an atresia because there is a disconnect, plus there is a fistula of the upper pouch. In this, there is a disconnect, so there is esophageal atresia with fistula of the lower pouch. This has got both upper and lower pouch are there. In this, there is no atresia because the esophagus is continuous, but they have a fistula. So this is pure tracheoesophageal fistula, and in this, there is neither fistula nor a atresia, but there is an esophageal stenosis. Now the commonest which we find is this, where the upper pouch is blind, the lower pouch is opening into the trachea, and therefore if we do not catch this early and we do not diagnose it, we may land up losing this child. Next. Okay. Associated with esophageal atresia and tracheoesophageal fistula are, this is a mnemonic which we used to do in anatomy. She is too pretty, try to catch her, these things. So similarly, we have what is known as Bacteral. That is, V stands for vertebral anomalies, A stands for anorectal malformation where there may be incorporated anus, C is cardiac anomalies, T is the presence of tracheoesophageal fistula, E is the presence of esophageal atresia, R is renal anomaly, and L is limb anomalies. So whenever you see a patient of esophageal atresia with or without tracheoesophageal fistula, think about these things. Again, we come back to prenatal. You must be going crazy. Everything can be diagnosed prenatal. Yeah, most of the structural defects are now being picked up, and therefore, my earnest request to all of you is, whenever your patients get pregnant, there is what is known as an anomaly scan, fetal anomaly scan, which ideally, with a good sonologist, should be done between 12 to 14 weeks. By 12 to 14 weeks, most of the anomalies have developed, if they are to develop. B, there is adequate amniotic fluid which is required for a good ultrasonology. C, you have 6 weeks to take a decision. In India, as of today, 20 weeks is the maximum where you can talk about termination of pregnancy. Beyond 20 weeks, you cannot do a medical termination of pregnancy with the present rules. So therefore, if you pick up an anomaly at around 12 to 14, you may say, okay, let's repeat the sonography or take a second opinion from another sonologist independently. If both of them say it is a real bad anomaly, terminate. Or as I said, if you see a diaphragmatic hernia at 14 weeks, you know this child is in a bad shape or will go in a bad shape, terminate. But if you do the first anomaly scan at 20 weeks, you don't have time. So therefore, 12 to 14 weeks, what is known as a fetal anomaly screening or scanning, which takes about 45 minutes done by a good sonologist. And it does not look at the pelvis of the mother or the bones of the mother, it only looks at the fetus from head to toe for all structural defects. So, if there is a small or absent stomach bubble seen in the fetus, or there is polyhydramnios. Now, polyhydramnios is not a very specific sign, but it shows upper GI obstruction. Because there is upper GI, the child is not swallowing adequate amniotic fluid, and therefore polyhydramnios is an indirect evidence. So it will be there even in diaphragmatic hernia, because in diaphragmatic hernia, most of the time the stomach is up. So the gastroesophageal junction is kinked. Therefore, there is a sort of an obstruction and therefore polyhydramnios. and a echoic area in the middle of the fetal neck, which is the dilated upper pouch of the esophagus. All these will be signs of probably an esophageal atresia, not necessarily of a tracheoesophageal fistula. Next. Okay, at birth or after birth, excessive salivation is very common. What happens is, when the child is born, the child starts swallowing, whether it is air and later on whether it is saliva, and then if you give the feed, it is the feed which the child is swallowing. Now you imagine in the commonest one, where there is a blind upper pouch, what happens is once the saliva fills up, it starts overflowing. When it starts overflowing, it goes into the trachea. Now the child is breathing through the trachea with the saliva, so it causes bubbles. So you will have frothing at the mouth with lot of bubbles coming up. You know that you are possibly dealing with an esophageal atresia. If by chance in such a child a feed is given, the same thing happens. As soon as he starts swallowing, it fills up that esophageal pouch, it starts overflowing and he starts aspirating. Once he aspirates, he has again feed followed by regurgitation, choking, cough. Respiratory distress due to two reasons. One is either there is aspiration of saliva, aspiration of the feed which is given, and that has given rise to either a bronchopneumonia or a regular pneumonitis or a classic pneumonia by the time they come to us. Cyanosis, with or without feeding. Again, in case of cyanosis, two possibilities. One is the respiratory problem giving rise to cyanosis. Second is the associated cardiac anomaly giving rise to cyanosis. Abdominal distension. Now, in a child with suspected esophageal atresia, if there is abdominal distension, you know that there is a fistula of the lower pouch. Otherwise, where will the air go into the intestine? Because the esophagus is disconnected. So there is no way of air going into the esophagus unless via the mouth, into the trachea, into the fistula, into the stomach. So if there is massive distension of, you think of not only a fistula but a large size fistula. Next. Again, plain X-ray will give a lot of information. Simple plain vertical X-ray can give a lot of information. First is upper pouch can be seen. If are bad, the child is not going to come out of the anesthesia. They is not going to come out of the whole thing. Sepsis might be a big problem, and no matter how good your surgery is, you may land up with a bad result. Shape and size of the heart, again to look for associated congenital anomaly. Boot-shaped heart is abnormal. Side of the aortic arch, is the aortic arch on the right or left? Because the approach, the thoracotomy which we normally do through the right side, may have to be done on the left side. Vertebral anomalies can be seen on a plain X-ray, chest and abdomen. Rib anomalies in terms of number or the structure. Abdominal mass effect, sometimes associated renal mass may be present. Gas shadow in the abdomen, if it is absent and you are thinking of esophageal atresia, there are two possibilities. One, it is pure atresia or esophageal atresia with upper pouch fistula. So there is no way air is going to enter the intestines and therefore there will be no air in the abdomen. Air fluid levels. Now this suggests there is some other distal obstruction, commonly an incorporate anus or what is known as an anorectal malformation. Anomalies of the limb bones like radius is absent or one of those things again are seen on the plain X-ray. Next. There you see the things what I was talking about. The upper pouch of the esophagus is seen, a patch in the right side upper zone, the ribs seem to be normal, the heart shadow seems to be okay. Adequate bowels, no air fluid levels, liver is enlarged which is all right, no air fluid levels and there is air in the abdomen. That means esophageal atresia with distal tracheoesophageal fistula. Next.